Act of Worship, your source for commentary and discussion on worship, theology, and culture. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones. Welcome to the Act of Worship podcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones, and we are here today in Psalm 29, continuing this journey through the Psalm project. And that means that Wednesday we will be covering 30, and we will be officially 1/5 of the way through the Psalm project. I know we've been at this for a while, and it seems like we should be further, but no, we are only a fifth, 20% of the way through the Psalm project. So here we are at Psalm 29. It's a very interesting psalm. Most Bibles will title it and attribute it to David. It's a song of praise to God as King. And this psalm uses themes that were current in the religions of the surrounding nations, particularly the Canaanites. We'll see that here. And so it discusses the power of the storms. We often see this in the Psalms. The victory that God has over flood waters. Often water is used as a metaphor for sin and evil and war that is against the psalmist. And so the psalmist here attacks these religions, particularly the Canaanite religions, by taking the praises that they claimed for their false gods and ascribing them to the Lord. So he uses similar language in Psalm 29 that would have been familiar to the Canaanites. And so he takes that and kind of flips it on its side and uses it to attribute it to the Lord. And you'll have to excuse me if you just heard my dog bark, because he tends to do that a lot when he wants attention. So the picture here is of God as king and enthroned over the vanquished floodwaters. And it's one of many indications that the psalm was used to celebrate a divinely given victory in battle. So let's read this, Psalm 29. There are 11 verses. And so here we go, Psalm 29. Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders, the Lord over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks the cedars of Lebanon. And he makes Lebanon to skip like a calf, and Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord flashes forth flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth and strips the forests bare. And in his temple all cry, glory. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. So we begin here where he's talking about ascribing to the Lord the glory due his name. He says in verse 1, ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings. Literally, what the Hebrew translation here says is sons of God. And this phrase is used in the religious text of the Canaanites and refers to the gods of their pantheon. Okay, they're religious leaders. They're very important people. This phrase would have been familiar to the Canaanites. And here David takes it and says, all of you sons of God, all of you gods, if you will, ascribe to the Lord, the one true God, the glory due his name. And so in the Bible, this phrase refers to spiritual beings such as cherubim and angels. And then in verse 2, ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. This is his reputation achieved through his acts in history, which are manifold and too many to mention. The psalmist is making it clear that we must ascribe the glory due to God because he is worthy of it. In verses 3 through 9, it talks about the voice of the Lord being over the thunders, breaking the cedars, making the Lebanon skip like a calf. A lot of metaphor in this section. The Canaanites believed that Baal provided rain and fertility and that his power was seen in the storm. And so they called Baal cloud rider in their religious texts, but truly God controls nature. And we're aware of that in 1 Kings 18 when Elijah calls down fire from heaven and the one true God sends fire, not Baal. And so the Canaanites again would have been familiar with this type of language. They believed that their God was seen in the thunderstorm, and David here is making it clear that God is the God of the thunderstorms, of the waters. Again, waters is used often in Scripture as a metaphor for sometimes evil or torrential chaos in people's lives. Yet David here says the voice of the Lord is over the waters. The glory of God thunders, the Lord over many waters. And that this probably he was referring to the regions of the Near East. As in the Bible, the sea represents forces of chaos and evil. And so he might have been referring to these nations that surrounded him, the nations with water, if you will. In verse 6, he makes Lebanon to skip like a calf and Sirion like a young wild ox. Lebanon and Sirion. These are regions of mountains that will shake before the power of God. Psalm 46:2 says, "Therefore we will not fear though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea." So David is referencing some very powerful forces here. His enemy nations, waters, all of these things that he's referencing, and yet he is making it clear that God stands supreme over all of them. And then in verse 8, the voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. And this could be translated literally holy desert. But the region of the Kadesh in classical Hebrew is a place, a name that occurs several times in the Bible, and it describes a site or possibly many sites located south of or at the southern border of Canaan and the kingdom of Judah in the kingdom of Israel. And so its exact location is unknown. Nobody knows, but this is a metaphor again. David is saying that God rules over it all, no matter where it is. And then in verse 10, the Lord sits enthroned over the flood. There we see that metaphor again for flood, for water. He comes full circle where in verse 3 he says the voice of the Lord is over the waters. And then he says in verse 10, the Lord sits enthroned over the flood. He sits enthroned as king forever. And so this text has made a great musical setting, one that I think calls people to worship. It could be used as a call to worship. One that invites people to see and behold the glory of God, who sits enthroned over everything, every principle, every power, every dominion. God is over it all. No matter how powerful or how dire the situation may seem, God controls it all. And so this is Psalm 29 set to music. Thank you for listening today to the Active Worship Podcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones. You sons of the gods, give the Lord as his right. Ascribe to the Lord both great glory and might. And unto the Lord's name its glory accord in splendor holiness, worship the Lord. The Lord's voice is over the waters abroad, and thunder proceeds from the glorious God. Above the great waters, the Lord from his height, the Lord's voice of splendor, the Lord's voice of might. The voice of the Lord splits the cedars in two. The Lord shatters trees that in Lebanon grew. The Lebanon's hills and Mount Sirion reeled when he made them skip like young calves in the field. The Lord's voice in flashes of lightning exclaims. The places it strikes all burst down into flames. The voice of the Lord makes the wilderness quake. The Lord makes the desert of Kadesh to shake. The Lord's voice induces the deer to give birth, and strips bare the forests that cover the earth. But inside his temple all things will exclaim, and everything found there will glory proclaim. The Lord rules as king as the flood waters raged, and still shall the Lord rule throughout every age. The Lord will the strength of his people increase. The Lord gives his people the blessing of peace.